Before we start this assignment, I wanted to briefly introduce you to the idea of superclasses and subclasses and specializations. You can actually read more about this in Appendix 1. The reason I want to tell you a little bit about this is there is an example of this in the banking database, and that's with the entity customer. So when we have a superclass subclass entity, this is a situation where we have a set of attributes that are shared by all instances of an entity, but certain groups of an entity have additional attributes that are applicable only to these subgroups. So for example, here you have a company store, right? And for that store, we can keep track of the store ID and the zip code. But the stores can be two different types of stores. They can be a company store or they could be a rented store. And for each one of those, we capture some other attributes. And so if you look at this example, all stores will have a store ID and a zip code, but company stores will have a real estate value and rented stores will have an annual rent. This is a disjointed, and you can go read more on the book, so a store has to be one or the other. This is then further illustrated, so we can have, for example, relationships between subtypes and other entities, which is, we don't have an example of this in our book, but what I do want to show you is it becomes a relational schema where we have the store relational schema, and then we have company store as a subtype and rented store as another subtype. There's a primary key foreign key relationship that you can use to see, could combine store and company store or store and rented store. So basically rented store has the attributes zip code, annual rent, realty company ID, because it's got this relationship, this foreign key, and company store has also zip code but also real estate value. So in our banking schema, we have an example of this. We have a customer and we capture all sorts of information on the customer, the address, the city. Customer type actually tells you if it's an individual or a business customer, and some other information that is applicable to both type of customers. But then we've got individual customers, which we capture their birth date and their first name and last name, and then we've got business customers, where we capture the name of the business and the state ID and incorporation date. So this is an example of a subtype, which we haven't seen in class. I just wanted to make you aware of it. From a joining perspective, nothing changes. If you want to join customer to individual, you're just going to use customer ID as that primary key, foreign key relationship, and likewise for business. And again, if you want to read more about it, you can go to Appendix 1 in your book, which is page 341.